The right keeps spreading an anti-Semitic lie, and it's wrong. There is this myth that, well, it's kind of a two-part myth, and it's a bizarre one. The first part is that Jews have been kicked out of over 200 countries all over the world. And the book, History of Anti-Semitism, a historical anthology, gets into this, it tackles this particular myth. And what we see is that many different groups have been expelled from many different areas all over the world. And I say areas because not all of those places were countries. For example, there was a particular ethnic group, I can't remember the name, and they were expelled from Cornwall in Britain. And so they were expelled, but then they went on to settle in Northumbria. And so that's an example. People historically all over the world have been driving each other out of different lands, expelling people from their lands, and so on and so forth. The Jews are no different. Second of all, not all of those places by a modern definition would count as countries. And so it's a dishonest lie to say that they have been kicked out of over 200 different countries. Rather, it's sort of this amalgamation in which we define country as pretty much any place where X group is being kicked out of, not taking into account that many, many different groups have been kicked out of different areas, even within their own country. So that's number one. It's a kind of lazy collapsing of human history and of the human condition, and not taking into account the realities and complexities of geopolitics, warfare, competition for resources, and so on and so forth. In many ways, when you think about it, it kind of resembles the Zionist lies, the Israeli lies with regards to the Palestinians. The idea that a single group has claim to this land, when in fact, yes, Jews historically do have a claim to that land, but so do other groups that have been living there and interacting with the land for a long, long time. Remember, Christians were once expelled from historic Palestine. So that is something to take into account. It doesn't mean Christians are horrible people. The analogy often used by people such as the disgusting anti-Semite Kenny Ko, for example, a man who started out promoting natural bodybuilding and has seemed to become somewhat of a Hitler-phile, is that if someone is kicked out of over 200 different pubs, does that mean there's something wrong with the person or something wrong with the pubs? And then it's like, well, the question is dishonest because some of those pubs were simple garages, if not street corners. Other pubs, so-called pubs, did indeed kick them out, but an entire swath of people have been kicked out of different areas, of different garages, and different pubs, and so on and so forth. And so it is singling out a specific group and collapsing human history into this very simple narrative. That's number one. Number two, and this sort of goes together, is the idea that the Jews control the world, that a single group controls the world. Now, is there problems with how much power the Israeli government has, particularly in the US? Yes, absolutely. There are reasons to critique that. Absolutely. I'm not going to quarrel with that. However, to say that Jews control the world is dishonest. And again, it's this adopting of a simplistic narrative, collapsing the nuances and complexities of the human condition into a simple narrative, instead of taking into account capitalism, that being the mode of production, boss, worker, and how the dominant mode of production, which is how wealth is produced in said society ripples outwards to all other aspects of society. The economic determinism theory, for example, that being that economic relationships essentially impact all other relationships. This is very similar to Marx's Das Kapital, what he lays out in Das Kapital. The fact of the matter is that human history and the current human condition is incredibly complex, and what you have is not necessarily a single system, but rather multiple overlapping systems that are overlapping and interacting with one another. And it is this sort of collision, if you will, this sort of fury or whatever between them. For example, if we look at nature, right? Soren Kierkegaard, for example, spoke of how the dialectic lives in nature itself. And he uses the example of how the sea swells and crashes against the land. Meanwhile, the trees in the forest fall and the bugs in the forest feast on the rotting tree. He is illustrating the dialectic, talking about how it exists in nature, and that being this sort of opposition. And that is the cause of suffering in the world. And when you think about it, a disease, when it gets into your body, is not seeking to essentially screw you over. The objective of a virus is not to kill you. The objective of a virus is to live. And it lives by feeding off of you, essentially. That's what a disease is. And this is similar when it comes to systems. Systems are overlapping, interacting, and in many ways clashing. And that is what is wrong with the world. That is the cause of alienation and many of the different problems that we have in the world, not a single group.